The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Seeing the crowds, Jesus went up the hill, and there he sat down, and was joined by his disciples. And then he began to speak, and this is what he taught them. How happy are the poor in spirit! Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Happy the gentle! They shall have the earth for their heritage. Happy those who mourn! They shall be comforted. Happy those who hunger and thirst for what is right. They shall be satisfied. Happy the merciful! They shall have mercy shown them. Happy the pure in heart! They shall see God. Happy the peacemakers! They shall be called sons of God. Happy those who are persecuted in the cause of right. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Happy are you when people abuse you and persecute you and speak all kinds of calumny against you on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. This is how they persecuted the prophets before you. The Gospel of the Lord. Our readings today, as we are in ordinary time, the second week after Easter, or the week after Trinity Sunday, take us into some wonderful directions. Our first reading is setting up and queuing up for Elijah, because Elijah is this incredible prophet, the likes of which will come back in the New Testament several times, because John the Baptist is seen as a prophet like Elijah, or is seen as Elijah who has come again. And so we're queuing up Elijah. And we find him here where he has gone to Ahab, the king. And he simply says to Ahab, as the Lord lives, the God of Israel, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain these years except by my order. Now, they're living in a kind of a deserty kind of place, huh? And no rain means great suffering. Imagine if there was no rain in your country for 3 years. That'd be great suffering because there's no water for food, for everything, bathing, nothing. So there's no water, there's no rain, and in those days they didn't have a desal plant that they could have pull out and supplement. So no rain is like no life. There's no crop being grown. There's no garden. There's no food to be eaten. The animals are going thirsty. The people are thirsty. No rain is like the worst torture. You know, when I was a teenager in school, the teacher read this story, and I'll never forget it. He was a very dramatic kind of person, and he had this little book that kind of condensed stories of the Bible, and he was reading it, and the story simply said, and Elijah came up to the king Ahab and said, hello, no rain, goodbye. And it did not rain for 3 years. It was a simple, I never forget it, this is how many years ago. But what is important here as we're queuing up Elijah is that Elijah is a prophet. It is not that he's seeing the future, but he's reading the hearts of people. And as he reads the hearts of people, what he's experiencing, what he's seeing, what he's doing is calling people back to God. That's what he's doing. And the Lord is protecting him. He said, go away from here, go eastward, go yourself and go into the east by the Jordan, and the ravens will bring you food. Now, the ravens are greedy kind of birds, you know. They don't share nothing with nobody. So, to get the ravens to bring food for Elijah, you know that's a miracle too. And so, God uses Elijah to chasten a people, but he provides for Elijah in the midst of all of this. And we see more of how God provides. When we were told, how many weeks ago, hello, no going out, goodbye. We didn't like the message, did we? We thought we would die. We thought this would be the end of the world. We thought that somehow this whole thing gone mad, that we couldn't survive 2 weeks of this madness, because nobody I know in Trinidad ever stay home for 2 weeks consecutive without doing nothing. And here we are, 13 weeks later or 12 weeks later, having lived through 12 weeks of hello, no going out, goodbye, and we lived through it. But not only have we lived through it, through the time we have been called back to God. And through the time we've had the opportunity to sit back and really reflect on our lives. Through the time we've had an opportunity to really come to terms with who God is. Through the time we've had an opportunity to really enter into and engage this God in a very, very different way. And just as the 3 years for the people of Israel at that time was a moment of reflecting on who their God really was, the last 13 weeks has been a moment of reflecting on who our God really is. And more than that, what does God want for you? And just as God provided for Elijah through the time of the desert, God has provided for you through this time of the desert. And you have been fed and fed richly. Although I know there's a hunger that has never been satisfied in these 13 weeks. And that's a hunger for the Eucharist. And that will be satisfied. So hold straight. We're nearly there. We're nearly there. As we hear this text, I invite you to listen again and reflect again upon this time of desert that we have had over these last weeks. And what is God speaking to you? What has God churned in your heart during this time that we have had? Capture it. Don't be afraid. Capture it. Honestly capture it. And when you capture it, let's make a step forward now in our relationship with God. From where we were before the 13 weeks ago to where we want to go on Thursday when we open back up churches and as we get back into a more regular routine in our life. Amen.